Dear young African comms professional, your future self has something to say. Hi there, and welcome to today's episode of To My Younger Self. My name is Blessing Emmanuel Macaulay. I am your host, and I've been bringing you all of the nice and wonderful conversations that we've been having on here. Today on To My Younger Self, I am joined by Anna Ceesay. She is a former BBC journalist with over 13 years of experience in media and communications. Originally from the UK, Anna now calls the Gambia home. She lives there with her husband and her 2 children, and I can promise you that Anna loves the Gambia. With a gift for developing communication strategies and creative campaigns that truly make a difference, Anna believes PR and communications aren't just nice to have, they are game changers for brands. She works with public and private sector clients, but her heart is in projects that create real social impact. Beyond her professional work, Anna is a traveler, a baker, and a devoted family woman. In our conversation, we explore the craft of impactful communication, the realities of working across cultures, and the values that guide her work. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anna to our episode of To My Younger Self.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here. Thank you. Wow. Thank you for that introduction. You're very kind.
Thank you. And it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so my regular first question is, how did you find your way into comms?
Okay, so you mentioned I'm a former BBC journalist. So I trained as a journalist in 2010, I think. I went to a college called London College of Communication. So my first role as a journalist was actually my first role was with Sky News. So I was a junior producer at Sky News. And then I joined the BBC World Service. I was a producer with them for a few years. Now, around that time as well, I got married and also we had our first child, which was a huge blessing, of course. And when she was young, I didn't want to not be, around as much as I could be. So I made the decision when she was about 18 months old to step away from journalism, just because the hours were very unforgiving. I was working shift work. So I was either working 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that, was not helpful when you have a baby in the house. And we were in London and we didn't unfortunately have close family nearby. So, it was a challenge. And I loved journalism and I still practice, a lot of the skills I learned in journalism, I still practice them today. So, finding out what the story is, asking questions, keeping asking questions. I also learned how to find people. When I was working at the World Service, we were told, in the morning meeting, okay, you need to find someone in Nigeria, for example, a vicar in Nigeria, okay, go. And you have to pick up the phones and you just have to find that person, get them on the radio. So just have to have that kind of investigative approach to my work still serves me today. So the skills I developed during that time, I still use. But in 2014, I approached a local charity that actually was based on the same road I lived on in Southeast London. And I said to them, hi, I'm Anna, I think you need a director of communications. And they were like, okay, yeah, sure. So that was my first job in communications. The hours were more flexible, it suited me and my family, but I was still able to be creative and make a difference. It was an NGO fighting against youth violence in London. So it was impactful work as well. And I was still able to, as I said, be creative and use my storytelling expertise. So that was my first job in comms, and I haven't looked back since then.
Comms is fun. It's really exciting. I know that journalism can also get exciting because I have been there. I started my career in journalism, but I think that comms is more exciting.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. I think it can be extremely varied. Journalism, I was blessed to be at the BBC and, no 2 days were ever the same. I got to travel as well, which was amazing. But what I feel with communications is that the projects can be so varied. The type of client you're working with can be so varied. The country you're working in can be so varied. Like there's just so much variety, and I love that. I've always loved that in my professional life. So I think that for me is a huge draw. But yeah, I definitely agree. Comms is very exciting.
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. So, how long have you been in comms for?
So that was, now it's been just over 13 years.
Just over 13 years. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So a while. So you can do the maths. You can try and figure out how old I am.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not why I'm here, but okay. So let's talk about following your heart. You said you tell your younger self, keep following your heart, especially during the tough times. Your values will always protect and guide you. Trust your instincts. And first of all, with your story of moving from the UK to the Gambia, I want to believe that you trusted your instincts and just followed your heart. And I especially like that you love it. But when did you, in your journey, realize that your values could actually protect and guide you?
I think it's actually only been in recent years that I've really sort of started going on a spiritual journey personally. And I've realized, someone told me, I think it was last year or the year before, they told me, Anna, you're an empath. And I thought, what are you talking about? Like, I literally don't know what you mean. But since they told me that, I thought, wow, that's actually spot on, because I'm someone who's led by their heart. So I will make decisions very impulsively. I will just make a decision based on what feels good. And that might sound like I don't plan at all. Of course, there's situations in which I have to be extremely sensible and plan and think of the logistics. And, I'm a parent, so I get that side of it as well. But in terms of big life decisions, for example, you bring up moving to Gambia, that was a very easy decision for me. I looked at my children, who were 2 and 6 at the time, and I thought, I want you to grow up understanding your Gambian side, your African side, as well as your British side. So that for me was a no-brainer. That was a decision that we made, in literally the space of a few days. And I told my husband, I think we should move to Gambia. And that was March 2019. And he was like, what? And then by July, we were here. July, that's a few months. So we just made that decision really quickly. And I think that has served me really well over the years. And when I think about how my values have protected me in terms of my professional experience in my professional life, I think I have always tried to listen to my gut instinct. And that's something that, we can sometimes push down, especially in the professional world, where perhaps sometimes we put on a persona, or, we sort of just keep going every day because we think it's the right thing to do. And we just keep putting one foot in front of the other because, we've just been told that's what needs to happen. But actually, if you really take a moment to stop and listen to your instinct and really think about, okay, but what is important to me? Like, which values guide me through my life, and what do I value? Then you can easily make the right decision for yourself. So I think there have been key moments in my career where perhaps I haven't realized I wasn't completely happy in a role, or I wasn't feeling completely fulfilled. And my husband as well has been such a guiding force for me, because he's a constant inspiration in terms of really listening to your heart and following your heart. And of course, we all have to earn money. Like, this all sounds very airy-fairy, and we all have to make a living and we all have to survive. It's not about ignoring that side of it, but it is about really figuring out, okay, is where I am right now where I want to be? And if it's not, what are the steps I can take in order to get where I want to be? Not to just, detonate everything today, but to really listen to yourself and trust yourself as well. I think that's key. I think when you're young, especially, I remember when I graduated from university, at that time, the financial crash had just happened. So I graduated in 2008. So there was a real lack mentality. There was a kind of, just grab everything, just take what you're given, and I think that can be a dangerous mindset to get in, because I think we all have to speak to our own truth, and we all have to make ourselves happy. We have one life to live, and work is a huge part of, especially our lives at this age, in this season of our lives. And so I think, I always was careful, or I tried to be careful, to listen to my instinct and to really figure out what my values were, which took work in itself. Like, if I say, what are your values? It's not necessarily an answer. Everybody has, everybody knows what their values are off the top of their head. But if you really think, okay, what's important to me? What do I like? What don't I like? Then you really start to understand the path that you want to take for yourself. And it's no one else's path. It's only your path, and it has to make sense to you.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Thank you for sharing that. So for the person that is listening and is probably just going through a phase and they're uncertain. So, I mean, just like the time that you said there was this time that it was just grab what you can, because that was what was available, because it was a season, right, where everybody just needed to just hold on to something. And there's somebody right now that's listening and saying, I actually am in a season where I just need to hold on to something, right? How can they stay true to themselves and stay true to their values, very importantly? Because again, sometimes you can just decide to hold on to something and you're holding on to the wrong thing. Or you say, you know what, I don't even want to hold on to just anything. So I will stay and wait for that thing that I really want. So yeah, how does someone that's listening navigate that phase?
I think the first thing to say is, if you're in that position right now, it's completely normal. So everybody's been there. We've all been there. We've all been in jobs or situations that we know deep down that are not the right place for us. So I think the first thing to do is figure out, like I said, what are your values? Like, what's important to you? Do you value, excellence? Do you value creativity? Do you value innovation? These are all just examples. There's so many values exercises you can do online for free. If you Google it, you can find stuff literally in minutes. I'm sure ChatGPT could help you as well. Our good friend ChatGPT. So yeah, just take some time. And I do this with clients as well. Of course, it's a different landscape for when you're talking about comms rather than personal and professional values, but it's the same principle. So try and you could have a look at 100 different values and figure out what are the 3 or 4 that resonate with you most. You might have a long list of 20 and you slash it down, you cut it down to 3 or 4, and from that you really try and figure out what's important to you. If you don't have that foundation of knowledge of knowing what's your truth, then it becomes very difficult to know, as you say, what to hold on to. So if you're in a job that you're not happy with right now, once you figure out your values, you'll then not only know that you're not happy, I think maybe you'll get some clarity on why you're not happy. And so if you need to stay in that job, for the paycheck, which 99% of people do, then you stay there. But you, as I said, take steps to find opportunities that speak to those values that you've identified. So, utilize LinkedIn. Like, LinkedIn is such an incredible personal branding marketing tool. So, connect with people that work at places that you want to work at. If they respond to your connections, which they don't always, but if you're lucky enough to get someone that speaks to you, then ask them questions, find out how they got to where you want to get to. Follow the companies you want to work for, research the issues that are important to you, start writing a blog, like put yourself out there. So I think these are all steps you can take. If you are in a place right now where you're not happy and you're not, or you're just a bit confused, you just need to figure out, is this the place for me? You might figure out in the end, actually, this is the right place for me. Maybe I wasn't approaching it in the right way. Maybe there are opportunities that I haven't actually fully uncovered in this situation. But yeah, I think that the most important thing is to go inwards, do that self-reflection, do the work on figuring out what's important to you, and then try and figure out a roadmap for how to get to where you want to get to. Nothing is impossible if you make a plan. She says, as the woman who's just said she's led by her heart, but in some situations, you have to have a plan, right? You do have to have a strategy, some thought behind it. So I think that's what I would advise.
Follow your heart, but make a plan. Says the woman who
Yes,
who made the decision to move countries with her entire family in days.
yes. Well,
Yes.
yeah, but I mean, and thank goodness I did, because like I said before our interview started, that was one of the best decisions I ever made. So yes, there are some scenarios in life where you can think too much and you can ponder and, worry and, machinate on all the different scenarios and all the different outcomes. But I think, yes, there are scenarios in which having a plan can be a very good thing, especially if you are unable to move in this particular moment. So that's what I would say.
I completely agree with you. So I describe myself as a spontaneous person. And because I'm spontaneous, I can actually make the decision to move countries in days as well. But I also know that sometimes you really just need to have a plan. So as much as you can make that decision, whatever it is, you also need to think through some of the decisions you're going to make. But I'm going to ask you the next question. Have there been times that you followed your heart and it backfired?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Yes, okay. I think I would say that, so right now I'm a freelance communications consultant. I have my business that's based in Gambia, working with clients, not just nationally, but internationally. This business I have now is the most financially successful business I've ever had. So I had a couple of false starts. I forget the year, but I tried to be a freelance writer for a few months, and that failed catastrophically. And that was I'm just gonna do some writing and I'll immediately earn money from it, and that didn't work at all. So I then went back into full-time employment. There was another time I set up a business, and it's not fair to call it a false start because I got so much out of it, but financially it wasn't viable. So I think, yes, there have been times when I've made decisions career-wise. They haven't always panned out. But this, knock on wood, this time, third time lucky, things seem to be, going much better. But yeah, of course, you follow your heart and sometimes you land with egg on your face. It can happen. But that's life as well. I think I'm also grateful for those experiences because they teach you so much. I'm grateful that I tried and failed to be a freelance writer because I spent 3 months writing. And of course, anyone that works in communications knows that the core of comms is writing. If you can't write, then, you're in a tough position. So I really honed my craft. Even if I didn't earn any money during that time, I honed my craft. I wrote every day. I wrote. So that, of course, gave me something that is priceless. The second business I set up, I gained so much knowledge. That was a magazine based on maternal mental health. So I gained so much knowledge on parenting, actually, and mental health, and met some incredible women who are doing incredible work in that arena. So yeah, nothing is ever wasted, of course. But yes, of course, there have been decisions I've made that financially haven't worked out. But yeah, like I said, thank goodness, so far this one's going better.
Third time is the charm, Yeah, so far so good. And I like that you said that you just took the learnings from those experiences and applied them, because falling on your face can be quite demoralizing sometimes, but not sometimes, all of the time, really. And just knowing that you can pick up and then take the learnings, apply them to next phase is really important. And then I think I also know that it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. Then after doing that, you decide to start something new. It's a lot of courage. So I salute your courage, and I hope that somebody can learn from these that you have shared. So thank you. I want to talk about your work as a freelance communications consultant. You said you celebrate your wins publicly. But behind the scenes, there are also rejections. There are those times that it just doesn't go according to plan. There are those times that maybe a client says, oh no, this is not what we want right now. There are times that your strategy probably just doesn't hit it, and the client can't understand what you're saying. What do those moments do for your confidence? Do they maybe derail your confidence? Do they make you think, maybe I'm not good for this? What does it do for you?
Yes, I think another great question. I think, yes, being a freelancer, anyone will tell you, is a roller coaster, and it takes some metal, some personal metal to be able to weather the storm of the ups and downs. And of course, like you said, what you'll see on my LinkedIn profile is what I'm presenting to the world, and I work in communications, so I know how to brand myself, right? I know what to portray in order to create this sense of like, oh, she knows what she's doing. But of course, the reality is not always like that. And you absolutely nailed it. Sometimes contracts don't go your way. Sometimes you write a 20-page strategy and the client never reads it or just doesn't get it. Sometimes there's times when you, of course, question yourself and have self-doubt and have imposter syndrome, and 1000% that happens. But again, I will give a mention to my husband, because he's an actor actually. So he is in the, TV and film industry, and he, of course, as an actor, has to deal with rejection so much, and he's been doing this for 20 years. So he has really coached me in those moments. For example, if contracts don't go my way, if I've been pitching and I get really close and then it doesn't happen, and it's very frustrating. I'm also a very impatient person, so I'm not good at waiting. So he's always told me, look, if something, what's yours is not going to pass you by. So to have that, like he always says, I forget which book the quote is from, maybe from The Success Principles, which is a brilliant book if anyone wants to read it. But he says, always be an inverse paranoid, which basically means that, always assume the universe is looking after you, even in those moments where you think, why is this not going my way? And I think that's been such a huge lesson for me, and of course, like, I'm only human. If I still don't get contracts, I still get frustrated, but I still try and remember those words that he gave me. And yeah, he's been a huge inspiration in terms of, like I said, weathering that storm. Yes, and it is not always easy, definitely. But, again, I always think anything that challenges you is ultimately character building. So yes, I am currently building my character.
I agree with that. Because I'm going to come to the next question that really touches on character building. You admitted that you're not a patient person. And, I can relate to that. And even yesterday, I had a conversation with someone and she looked at me with my kids and I was like, I thought you said you were not a patient person. Because kids humble you. So, how have you learned to wait without losing momentum? Because sometimes you just have to wait and you don't have a choice. There's no way around it. You just have to wait. So how have you learned to wait without losing steam?
Yeah,
while waiting?
It's a great question. I think, so I've been running my business for 3 years now in the Gambia. And what I've learned is that in the quiet times, to try and enjoy them instead of kind of wishing that they weren't quiet, because when it goes crazy and you can barely catch your breath. And of course that can be very exciting, but also extremely exhausting. So firstly, to value those quiet times in themselves, but also, instead of, I've tried to pick up other activities instead of, if, for example, let's say, any one time I could, if I'm really busy, I could have 5 contracts at the same time. But if I'm quiet, I've got 1, right? So if I've got 1 contract, instead of sitting around moping, which would be very easy for me to do. For example, I know you guys have a relationship with the Comms Avenue. So I picked up some mentorship this year with the Comms Avenue, which was the most incredible experience. Shout out to my mentee, Elizabeth, who is also Nigerian. She was incredible to work with and such a joy to see her flourish. So I did some mentoring with them, which was really the most wonderful experience. I love to read, so and I've tried to accelerate my own personal learning this year. So I have a list actually of books that I've read. So I think I've read 10 books in 10 months. And that's not just showing off. Like, I'm someone that used to read novels and enjoy novels, but again, it was my husband that encouraged me to, start reading the non-fiction books, for example, Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO, that kind of thing. The kind of professional development type titles I have loved delving into over the past year. So yeah, when things are quiet, I try to develop myself, take courses, read, mentor, and then, by the time you looked up, you've forgotten that you're you're not busy in quotation marks, but actually you've been developing yourself and also trying to give back when it comes to the mentoring as well. And then, you've forgotten that you've only got one contract, and then suddenly another 3 pop up. Or that's what it feels like anyway. So I think there's a perception in terms of time, like we can sometimes get very bogged down in the moment. But if you try and kind of take look at the bigger picture, and look at which other activities can I do to keep myself busy in the meantime, then that's what's helped me.
And I completely can relate to this, because as someone that runs a PR agency, there are some times that everywhere is quiet. And in those quiet times, there's a tendency to want to get anxious, and you're thinking, I have salaries to pay, I have bills to pay, and I'm just thinking, okay, so what next? How do we get this done? And instead of that, and that's also something I've told my team, when we're in that phase where it seems quiet, let's re-strategize. Let's think of what next to do, because the work will come, and then when it comes, we want to be prepared for it. So that's really profound.
I love that. Yeah, and you bring up a great point, because of course, yes, as well as going inwards, it's important to also market yourself, like you say, re-strategize, and also put yourself out there. So yeah, that's what I also do. That if I find myself in a quiet period, I think, okay, I probably should update my website, or give my LinkedIn a bit more attention, or maybe I need to do a new photo shoot, which I did just a few months ago. I realized that I hadn't updated my photos in about 3 years. So yes, absolutely, you're right. Kind of building the foundation, and also, of course, attracting that energy of new clients, new contracts.
Yeah, so for you that's listening, just know that the quiet time should not go to waste, and you can just put that time to really good use by making sure that you improve yourself, improve your crafts, put out yourself, just do something that would make you feel like, okay, that time wasn't really wasted. So let's talk about the universe guiding you. So you believe that the universe is always guiding you, and I mean, personally, I say that it's God that's guiding me, and I know that God is the God of the universe. So are there times that something just didn't go according to how you wanted it to, and maybe you felt sad about it, because it also happens, but eventually you realized that it wasn't the best thing that could have happened to you, and it was just good that it happened, that you didn't get that thing in that moment.
Comms of Africa, the Pan-African voice of communication, media, and content, connecting today's professionals and tomorrow's leaders across the continent.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm trying to think of something. I'm sure that has happened. Like I said, I try to take a spiritual view on life, where I do genuinely believe that ultimately the universe is looking after us, and everything that happens for a reason. So I think, yes, there have definitely been moments when, like if we talk about my impatience, when contracts haven't gone my way, when, people start ghosting me and don't call me back, and I get very frustrated. And in that moment, it feels like the whole world is collapsing. But actually, looking back in hindsight, you think, God, thank God that didn't go my way, because X, Y, Z. So I think absolutely there's always been times when you think, what, actually it was a lucky escape. And that's what I mean by trying to take the bigger view, because sometimes we can be, so kind of intricately woven in each moment of every day and feel like the weight of it, you know what I mean? But if you try to take the longer view and think, what, will this matter to me in 6 months' time? Will this matter to me even in a week's time? Then I think you sometimes can pull yourself out of that mindset. But yes, there have definitely been moments where I've felt that I've had a lucky escape.
When you're in between those times, and between a win and then between the silence, how do you keep believing? Because I know that faith has a major role to play, and then by faith I mean just your state of mind. Just hope and then believing for the best. So how do you keep believing in those moments? Because again, I think that sometimes quiet can be as long as, say, 6 months, say 12 months, or even more, depending on a person's season, right? So how do you keep believing in your journey?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of values. So I think belief comes from knowing yourself. And if you are a person of faith as well, of course, having that relationship with faith as well, but knowing yourself in terms of values and who you are and what your truth is, I think that's the key. I think that's what you always have to believe in. There's very little we can control in life, but we can control how we choose to feel, and we can control the path that we set for ourselves. Of course, there's so many factors, there's so many things impacting that, but you always have a choice in terms of your destiny. And I really believe that. So I think, in terms of belief, I would say, again, knowing yourself, knowing what makes you tick, knowing what makes you sing, and knowing what you hate as well, knowing what doesn't light you up and what doesn't resonate with you is also incredibly important for maintaining that belief in your path and your ultimate destiny in terms of your career.
And that's really, really, really important, because sometimes that's all that can keep you going. Just knowing that, okay, this is who I am, and these are the things that I value. It also keeps your mind open, and then keeps you looking out for such opportunities. So yes, if you're listening, you should certainly do that. Consider these little steps that can just help you stay in your journey and in your trajectory. Let me come to the conversation about questions. So you said learn from your peers, keep asking questions, and figure out the roadmap. If you were speaking to your younger self today, what questions would you tell her to ask?
How do I make money? That's a question I did not.
That's a very important question,
when I was younger. Oh my gosh, which questions would I tell my younger self to ask? Well, this is not a question, but I would encourage her to fight for herself. So, and this comes with age. I'm almost 40, so this comes from working not in communications, but in various fields for almost 20 years. I think when you're young, the tendency is to, like I said, either just say yes to everything in terms of your professional life, or just think that, if something doesn't feel good, but no, maybe that's just how it is and it's not supposed to feel good, or, not to know how to advocate for yourself and to fight for yourself in a professional setting. So I think I would encourage her to speak up if she's not happy with something, to always speak up and to always speak her truth. Even if it means that she comes across like the difficult person in the room, or the person that's saying something that is a bit controversial. You'd be surprised in those situations, which I do more and more and more now I'm older, the number of people that will then reach out to you after and say, I'm so glad you said that, because I was feeling exactly the same thing. So always speak your truth and always say to people how you're feeling. That's really important, because there's nothing worse than being unhappy in your job or in your role. I think that is, that's something I would encourage her to do. That is not a question, so I'm sorry. I'm not answering your question.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know what else
these conversations are usually unpredictable. So
yeah.
However it goes is okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I can understand that. I mean, that's not a question, but certainly speak up for yourself. And that's something I would also tell my younger self, because I don't know, would I say my younger self was he shy? I'm not even sure. But I know that my younger self was the person that wasn't like she wasn't inquisitive, wasn't like she wasn't brilliant, but for whatever reason, some other people were able to just steal the shine and thrive. And then she was always in the background. So yes, I would tell her today to speak up for herself, just like you would tell your younger self, because I've also realized that, and I mean, it took some time to learn that. I've realized that a lot of times nobody's actually speaking for you, unfortunately. And even those that you thought, okay, this person has my back, this person would speak for me and defend me, or even your line manager is not speaking for you. And so because they're not speaking for you, you're just in the background. So you have to show up for yourself. And I think I would also say show up like a peacock.
I love that, like a peacock. With all your colors and your feathers. Yeah, I love that.
Yes. So there's a way that Nigerians show up. And I would say show up like a Nigerian, because sometimes if you don't show up like that, nobody knows that you have something to give, and nobody's coming to ask you for your thoughts or input on this particular subject. And I also bought the belief that your work will speak for you. Unfortunately, I think it took me some years to realize that your work doesn't actually speak for you if you are not speaking. So you have to speak up for yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that reminder. Okay, we will now go on to the reflection. Abiodun, you have the mic now.
Okay. Well, this is a very, very profound session. Thank you very much, Anna, for sharing some of your stories and your experiences. Even as a young comms professional, some of the things that you shared, I can actually relate to them. Some of us didn't even plan to be in comms. I was actually chasing something else. I did economics as my first. I was hoping I was going to get into the financial sector. Started out in business development, and then I realized, it isn't right. And then I decided, let me resign and do for something that feels kind of relative. And then growing up, I realized I was a storyteller. I write while I was young. While I was in school, I wrote for my school's publication. So at that point, I just said, let me just transition to come and see how it looks like. Anyways, I'm actually in the financial industry as a comms person, so kind of aligned. I'm not as spontaneous as you. So yeah, the one you have to plan a lot before you make decisions. That's where I take time to plan. But I also realized that life can be unscripted. I think I had a quote that says, "What happens when you are planning? That's life. You can make so many plans, and then you realize that this is where you'll find yourself." I'm also talking about your values. So I have a question here. So you said that we could actually sit down and outline the values that when you're doing anything, these values are non-negotiable. For you, whenever you're working in the communication space, what's that one value or that one principle that you know that this value, it's non-negotiable. I am going to stick with this, or I have to let this go.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. I love what you're saying about life is unscripted sometimes. That's so true. I think the one value that for me is non-negotiable, I have 3 core values, but the one value that is non-negotiable is creativity. Because if I feel that I can't be creative, then it's game over. If I'm working with a client that I feel, just wants a cardboard cutout of a press release or, a website, then that doesn't excite me at all. I have to feel that I have some creative input and I can act creatively as well. I'm going to cheat and tell you my other 2 core values, even though that's not the question you asked me. So collaboration is also really important to me because I always want to work collaboratively with clients and with partners and with stakeholders, whoever I'm working with at the time. If you cannot work together efficiently as a team, then again, it's just not an enjoyable experience. And the third one is integrity. So I always want to do what I say I'm going to do. That is a really important value to me because I feel like, especially in our industry, in PR and communications, sometimes there is some distrust of the value that we can offer, and the impact we're going to have. And I think if you tell people exactly what you're going to deliver and they trust you, then you're building that incredibly important relationship. So yeah, but I would say number one for me, the number one value is creativity.
Okay, thank you very much. Creativity, very important in this industry. Yeah. So while you were also talking, you made mention about how you transitioned from journalism to communications. And so I'm looking at experience in communications in UK and then experience in communications in Africa, in Gambia, so to say. Has there been any sort of highlight or what's the word to use now? Like a difference that this is probably the difference between communications in the UK and your experience in Gambia?
Another great question, thank you. So like I said, my first role in communications in the UK was working for a charity in London that was campaigning against youth violence. I then went to a charity that campaigned against bullying. So these organizations were all kind of really focused around young people and advocacy. And I think, I think I've naturally gravitated towards the same kind of project in my work. In Gambia, so working on a lot of advocacy projects, some youth-led as well. I think, is there a difference between working in communications in the UK and Gambia? I'm sure there is, but I think because I feel like I approach the work in the same way. Of course, I've developed and I've progressed over, let's say, 10 years. But I think, like I said, because I'm very value-led and I really only work on projects that I'm passionate about. So I think I have, naturally traveled towards the things that light me up. And I think because of that, I would say not really. I think, and also I work with an international array of clients now anyway as well. So I have worked, a considerable chunk of my clients are based in the Gambia, but I still work with colleagues from around the world every day as well. So I think, I take the international view. When I was at the World Service as well, obviously I was working with people from around the world every day. So I think I've always had that outlook. I've tried not to key too much into where I am physically, but I've always wanted to have that international perspective. But that is a very good question, and I'm going to think about it because it's something I've never really considered. I don't know if I've answered adequately, but that's my take.
Yeah, I got some insight from it. Despite the location, we still have an international perspective. That's very, 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 very profound. So I think the last thing that probably is reflection for me, taking a cue from what you said as a young person who comes, is how to deal with rejections. That's one very key thing that it took me a whole lot of time to actually come to terms with. And sometimes you work on a proposal, you share it, I'm giving my best, this should fly. And then the result comes in and you're like, what? No way. And those periods really do hurt. And I'm glad with what you shared. Those periods, you just understand that it's part of the job. It's not something you can totally eliminate, but it's not you personally. Many factors that have actually contributed to that. And of course, dust your heart and keep on moving. The next one is just decline and then move on it as well. The rejections, what would you have probably told your younger self on how to handle rejections? Better, because for young professionals, we really do not handle rejections better because it's just coming into the space, seeing how this thing works, we have our expectations, and then this thing comes, and then we all know. So what advice would you have given your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to not be so impatient, which I tell myself today as well. I really think rejection is such a key part of life, and it's not a part of life, of course, that's fun, but I think, like I said, it builds character. And like I was mentioning earlier, even if in the moment it feels like this is the end of the world, actually, when you look back at it in 6 months, you think, actually, let's say you write a strategy or a proposal that, you give to your boss and it doesn't go down well. In hindsight, you might look back at it with your new knowledge and think, actually, you know what, there were some holes here and there are things that I can improve on. And of course, no one likes to be told that their work is not valid. And that's one of the most horrible feelings in the world, but at the same time, take it as an opportunity for learning and an opportunity for growth. I mentioned the Stephen Bartlett book earlier, The Diary of a CEO. He has a section in it where he talks about, if don't be the smartest person in the room. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So, always accept that we all have, I'm talking on this podcast as a guest very kindly of Blessings, but, I am still learning every day. We're all still learning. I'm not in a position of, I'm up here and you're down there or whatever. No, we're all literally kind of just trying to figure it out every day, and we're all in a position of learning. And so I think whenever I get, not necessarily whenever I don't get a contract, but if I'm in a job or if I have a client when, yes, I don't get feedback that I want, or I don't like the sound of, then I think, okay, this is tough. I don't like hearing this. I acknowledge that. It doesn't feel good, but then what can I do? Which steps can I take in order to move forward, to meet their expectations, or to bridge this gap that they're talking about, and to try as hard as it is to take my ego out of it. So I think, it's very easy, especially in this industry, when of course we have to, be on a lot of the time. We have to present, we have to be good at public speaking. We have to, of course, which are all kind of extroverted characteristics. And sometimes that comes with egos. I know, with myself, definitely that does. So I think I have to put that on the back burner sometimes and think, okay, just put your ego aside, Anna, and listen to what this person is saying. They're not happy with X, Y, Z. How can we address that? So just to try and talk myself down a little bit as well. I think I've had to learn the hard way to do that. But it's not easy. And I do think that, the more you have to deal with rejection, the easier it does get. And that's something that my husband has taught me as well. As an actor, he's consistently having to deal with rejection. But, it's sort of, the more you do it, then the sting kind of lessens. So I think, it's practice, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Okay, I think that's it for me. Thank you very much, Anna, for time. The experiences you shared, the insights are wonderful. I'm going to hold on to some of them. Hopefully, maybe one of these days when you're in Nigeria, like you said, you will, we can meet up and I'll remind you that.
I would love to. Thank you so much. They were really wonderful questions. Love to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, Blessing, as well. I'm about to Blessing.
All right, thank you so much, Abiodun. So let me help you answer one question that Anna didn't quite answer. What's the difference? What's the difference between?
Are you rejecting me, Blessing? Is this a rejection?
No. Anna, you're my person.
Are you sure?
Anna, you're my person.
I can smell it.
There's a big difference between how comms and the entire PR thing works in the UK versus how it works in Africa. And I haven't particularly worked with media in the Gambia, but I can say that from what I know, there's a huge difference, and especially on the media side of things. And this is because, from having at PR Efficients, we also serve international clients, and sometimes this client, especially those in the West, have these expectations, and they say that they want media coverage, and then they mostly want free media, and they want earned media. And while it makes sense for what it is worth, their stories may even be valid, but you get to Nigeria and you get to some other parts of West Africa, and the guys in the media are saying, how much is your budget? So yeah, Anna, do you also experience that in the Gambia?
What do you mean? Just elaborate a bit more, sorry.
So what's your budget for publishing this story?
Okay, you mean that in Africa you get asked what's your budget more than, let's say, in the West?
Yeah, so I think in the West, it would be more about pitches, right? Send out a pitch, your pitch goes through, and then you're good, we'll publish. But in these parts of the world, it's more like, okay, your pitch is good, but how much is the budget for this particular story?
So you mean if you're pitching a media story to a journalist, so if in the UK I was to pitch to a news outlet and they would just publish for free, you're saying if you send something in Nigeria, for example, you have to pay for media coverage? That's what you mean?
No.
Yes, I have experienced, you're right, actually, that is a fantastic point. I have experienced something like that where, yes, certain coverage which I would class as editorial is treated as advertorial, right? So the content is newsworthy, yet the media platform says that there's a charge, and I go, but hang on a minute, this is in the public interest to publish it. This is not an advert, you know what I mean? Especially when you're working with, let's say, an NGO or a social impact client, you know, you're not trying to sell a product, you're trying to tell a story. So I think, yes, you're absolutely right, I have experienced that, and it does confound me in moments. It's not something I come up against a lot, but I have definitely had a few experiences where I've heard about those experiences from other people, and I've also had them myself. So you're right. I think, of course, like media organizations across the globe are under huge financial pressure. You know, their model is changing, their ad revenue is evolving. You know, I think I read recently that for the first time, social media platforms now have more advertising revenue than, you know, the major media organizations. So I think, of course, there's a different pressure on them, and of course, on a continent like Africa, of course, those pressures can be even more exacerbated because of a lack of funding. But I do think, you know, as a former journalist, I will always defend the role of journalism in, you know, in educating the public on what's happening. And, you know, as I said, some stories are absolutely in the public interest. Of course, some press releases you send out and you're trying to sell a toilet brush, then, you know, clearly, like, you can see where the conflict comes there. But there are some examples where you absolutely shouldn't be charged for media coverage. So yes, that's the point. Yeah.
And now we're going to take this conversation offline.
Okay. Yes, I would love to.
We will, because it's I feel like it doesn't end really. And in recent times, I've gotten really frustrated, even with my friends in the media, and I'm like, no, now you guys, it's a human interest story, and yeah, we'll get to that. Definitely. Yeah, and I've had experiences as well where you have, you know, let's say a piece of video content which you're giving to a journalist as supplementary to their interview, let's say, with your client, and then they'll say, no, but there's a charge for playing that, and you're thinking, yeah, but I'm literally giving you content for free. You know, this is something that you don't have to pay anything for, but you're saying I have to pay for it, which is just confusing on so many levels. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. But yes, let's definitely take it offline. Yes, we will. Okay, we will now take your letter to your younger self.
Yeah. Okay. Dear Anna, I'm writing this letter as I'm about to turn 40. You're 25 and have just started your career as a journalist. As you navigate the next 15 years, here's my advice. Number 1, keep following your heart, especially during the tough times. Your values will always protect and guide you. Trust your instincts. Number 2, don't be afraid to speak up. You have a unique perspective and great value to offer. In a few years, you'll be able to speak in front of anyone, but you have to practice now. 3, invest in your growth. From this moment, personal, professional, and spiritual. Read a chapter of a book every day. You'll think you don't have time, but you do. In a year, you'll be shocked at how much you can learn. FYI, I wish I had done this sooner. 4, hone your listening skills. To be the best storyteller you can be, you need to master active listening. In future, people will tell you it's one of your greatest assets. 5, you may not stay in journalism forever. Spoiler, you end up working in communications and realize it's what you were always destined to do. But the skills you're developing now will continue to serve you. Writing, editing, pitching, researching, speaking to people, and ultimately telling stories. 6, learn from your peers. Keep asking questions. If someone is where you want to be, find out how they got there. Nothing is out of reach if you figure out the roadmap. 7, if you start getting too comfortable in a role, it's either a sign that you need to move on or acquire a new skill. Always strive to stretch yourself and be better. 8, understand how to work with colleagues and manage people. It's a skill that's vastly underrated. Always strive to stretch yourself and be better. Oh, sorry. I just went back to the previous point. It's a skill that is vastly underrated. True leaders nurture, empower, and learn from their teams. 9, patience is not a virtue that comes naturally to you, but there will be times in your career where you have to wait, time of writing included. Someone very wise tells you that what's yours will not pass you by. Heed their advice. Finally, number 10, enjoy the ride and expect the unexpected. You didn't enter this industry to have a 9-to-5 life. There will be highs coming that you'll never forget. I don't have all the answers, but I hope this is helpful. You got this. Lots of love, Anna. That's my letter.
Oh, look at that. I always enjoy these letters because it makes me feel it gives me a sense of who your younger self was. And I'm glad that you get to write these to her, and I hope that someone like Abiodun can take lessons from all that you've written to 25-year-old Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's where we'll leave today's conversation with Anna. It was a powerful reminder that in communications and in life, our values are not just a moral compass. They are our protective shield. So whether it's in navigating career highs, enduring the sting of rejection, or chasing opportunities that truly align with who you are, following your heart and trusting your instincts can make all the difference. If this conversation resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a friend or a colleague who could use that encouragement. You can listen and subscribe to My Younger Self on Spotify. And if you are more of a visual listener, catch the full episode on YouTube and subscribe. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning from those around you, and most importantly, keep following your heart.
To My Younger Self is brought to you by PR Fusions Africa in collaboration with Comms Mentorship Circle.